way that was changing.
Okay, good evening, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting nurture. Alright, earlier today I worked on the slide scene, the suture scene, and the video game console scene. So now I'm going to hit this character, and this scene down here with the swing set and the couple walking off in the distance. So I have another palette mixed up for their clothing. Worry about flesh tones later. And just going to block in the colors one at a time. Here we go.
Recently I made a list of myths that you and I were in the middle of shifting. We were caught between stories. And that's the ground for incredible anxiety. Because who you were was defined by the myth. Where you fit in the scheme of things. Just let me run through this list and get a feeling for how it embraces you. Many of us grew up with the American dream myth. And we saw the GNP rising and rising before our very eye. And every next generation was better off than the last one. New moment, new myth. This generation is not as well off. Their money doesn't buy as much security and safety and luxury and life. And they have more endangered resources to live with. That's what we are giving not the seventh generation, but the next generation. So we have a shifting myth. We're still holding on to the old one. In each case, you'll see how much we hold on to the old one because we don't want to face the new one. We are a youth culture. Our values are in youth. Our world mastery, etc. However, the baby boomers will be 50 in 1996. So not only is that the power realm age of the society, but it's just over the edge. The baby boomers are starting to go out by the cultural values. Because when you're old, if you're in a part of a hunting tribe, they just leave you behind. If you're part of a gathering tribe, they have jobs for you within the social structure. You're part of the system, but you care for the children. You're an elder. You are the holder of the wisdom of the tribe. But what our culture has done to aging people is fear, panic, loss, isolation, irrelevance, a kind of a burden to the social system. And yet all of us are on that path to aging. In India, they have ashrams as stages of life. In the first stage, you're a student. And then after about 20, you're with family. And your job is to work in the world and do very, very well. Very successful in terms of resources. And those resources, there's a formula for how you use them during that period. You use them for your family, you use them for children and old people, you use them for holy people. And then in the third stage of your life, your children are grown, they take over the business, and you start your studies, your spiritual studies, your pilgrimages, things like that. Alone or with a partner or with a community. And then comes, when you're 60, the sannyas stage, when you are free of all structures, and the society just says, go baby, go. Society's there to support you because it needs what you have to offer. And it's a mature enough society to recognize this fact. That's the interesting shifting myths of youth. We grew up, many of us, with the myth that humans were the stewards of nature. Was humans, or nature, even worse, nature was there for humans. Stewards, at least, was a nice rationalization cop-out. But the game that you're afraid of is that you are just part of it all. You are part of a biotic community. You are part of many, many social structures, and that's as much your identity as your being busy being an individual. And there's the next myth that's in transition. I remember participating in the support of a number of myths that are now dysfunctional, by the way. I thought splitting the atom was great. I was wrong. But I thought that individualism was wonderful because it was liberation from social institutions. And it was empowering the individual to think for themselves and feel for themselves, and that's what the 60s seemed to be in large part about. Feeling and thinking for yourself, so that if you went into a community, it was an intentional act on your part to be part of a community. You weren't locked into systems. And the 60s were far out in that sense. Because all of the vertical systems, all the vertical power structures, turned into paper tigers. Oh, they could sting, but they were still paper tigers. I mean, the image that I love is of all of the hippies surrounding the Pentagon and holding hands and oming to make it rise. I mean, doesn't it change the image of the Pentagon now? Not the Pentagon. Yes, the Pentagon. Oh. Now, it is true only a few people saw it rise. But it wasn't the issue of whether you saw it rise. They gave credence to that. It was the issue of the symbolic statement that was being made. And that break from vertical, patriarchal authority institutions that preserved incredible discriminations and oppressions and so on started to crumble. Civil rights, sexual freedom, environmental consciousness, women's movement, anti-Vietnam movement about the immorality of economic wars. And once you take Humpty Dumpty apart, it's really hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. No matter how hard George Bush tries, or Ronald Reagan, or Bob Dole, or whoever. They all happen to be Republicans, but they could be Democrats. But you can see that creative government is that tension, by the way, between the force of preservation and the force of change. And the art is not to get so carried away with change you lose the baby with the bath, and not to get so caught in inertia that you miss the opportunity for survival, basically, because you don't adapt. Then there was the myth of material acquisition, in which the temples become the shopping malls.
Alright, so that sets the swing set up a little bit.
Thousands of people going through.
Let's get right, zoom in on there as far as it'll go.
Their whole culture is centered around the shopping mall.
Right.
Social institutions, there are the old men counting beads, there's the whole structure. And it's a social institution that represents some of our highest aspirations. And emerging is another myth that is demanded by the limitation of the resources we have available. Is that voluntary simplicity is going to be in. That living simply, not collecting stuff, is going to be in. Not just using up resources in order to, because you're not under the illusion it's going to make you happy. Amen. I've told about collecting boxes, that every time I move, I carry the boxes with me. I rent a truck, and these boxes are all my memorabilia. And after a while I thought, why am I carrying these with me? It costs me money, I gotta put them in storage, I never open them. They're all the important papers that I'll want later. But why will I want them later? That's the assumption that later will be less interesting than now is, because now is so interesting I never open the boxes. That would be a later thing, yeah. Much later, baby, much later. The art is to leave no footprints. But all of this is a selection from the vast, formless universe of creating a reality called a news story. It creates reality for all of our consciousnesses. And it creates the sustaining of a certain kind of value system that is not just. And the rational mind is in the service of protecting your separateness first. Then you can use it for play and sport and technological advance, but it's to make you more comfortable and feel safer in a basically unsafe situation. Because your separateness is part of that which is changing. And it's like trying to stand on sand that's in the ocean where it's all constantly giving way beneath your feet. I was in New Haven going to New York, and I had to take the late night train where you bought the ticket on the train. And so I had just become 60, and the conductor came along, and I said, "Senior citizen, please." And he immediately gave me a ticket that cost half of what I would have paid if I hadn't said that. And I said to him, "Don't you want to see the identification?"
Alright, so that's just a few blobs of color on them, but that brings them out pretty nicely, I
And he
think.
said, "No."
Alright, so now I'm going to look over to this section here with the execution scene.
That was a story I didn't tell you before because I was partial. But we now value what we really put down before, and what our Native American friends have always valued is the intuitive heart-mind. A deep, deep wisdom in people. We have gotten fascinated with knowledge, and we forgot wisdom. So that our mythic heroes are people like Henry Kissinger. We're going from a myth that the separation of the church and the state is therefore license for the state to be immoral and have no values, and lie and cheat and do whatever it needs to do. And that reflects the separation between business and church as well. And that was based on the assumption that the church had the power to balance the system. You know, we'd have some social institutions that would be based on greed, and some social institutions which would be based on compassion. I would say both of those things prove false. Doesn't work. System doesn't work. Just like doctors who say, my job's only to save lives, as technology makes it possible to keep a life going longer and longer, they have to face the ethical situation. Dr. Kevorkian was just saying, hey fellas, you can deny it as long as you want, but this is the way the universe is. And you will watch all the laws have to struggle with this. And he may go to jail just like Gandhi went to jail, just like anybody goes to jail. You know, I think he's a creepy guy, but at the same moment, I think what he's doing is extraordinary. I wish he'd smile a little more. I wish he saw the humor of his own predicament so he could really enjoy it. He is enjoying it, but he's enjoying it a little bit from somebody. Somebody's enjoying it instead of nobody enjoying it. I work a lot with nobody from my own mind. And Wavy is very helpful to me with his Nobody for President campaign. Because he has all these slogans like, nobody can solve our economic problems. His best one is Nobody Cares. That's the one I like. See? To me, that's a statement of compassion. Nobody cares. See, I say that in the advanced course. Well, I went through one that I think is not one that we're in the transition of at the moment, but I was passed through the moment when scheduled feeding was in. Remember that? So I could cry my little eyes out and nothing happened. And I've been disempowered ever since. That's changed. We now have demand feeding within reason. We had monogamy, remember that? By 1975, over 50% of the marriages, of the people getting married at that point, would end in divorce. Not that we were married then, we were divorced, because that's people from previous generations. We basically now are living in a culture of serial monogamy. Now, is that bad or good? That's your mind. It determines that. It just is what is. Do people have any less opportunity to come to God in serial monogamy than in monogamy? Depends on your spiritual practice. Your practice is relationship, and you want to use your marriage. Wow, one marriage can take you a long way. You can dig a mighty deep well. So it's not a good and evil issue. And you say, well, is it good for the children? You know, I have a number of friends who got divorced and they remarried, and all four of the family are really good friends. Everybody just married for the wrong reasons the first time. And they're all doing very well. The kids end up having 2 households and 4 parents. And I've thought about that, and I've experienced jealousy in myself. I was stuck with the complete neuroses of 2 people. You know, I couldn't play anybody off against anybody. You know, and they were neurotic just the same way. That's why they got married. So the fun of having 4. See, I mean, I'm just shifting consciousness a little bit to say, let's just stay open to what's happening and find whether we can be peaceful in the process of change rather than in always resisting the change. Is this too weird? No, you say no. So thank you. You reassure me that I can go on. Every now and then I look at somebody's face that's going like this, and I go, oh, Jesus, I've gone too far out. But I don't care. See, in the advanced course, I don't care. It's interesting to have the kind of up on a stage with a microphone and then watch somebody go to sleep about the 3rd row, you know. And you're talking on and on and on, but that consciousness has gone somewhere else. It's not a... But that's my problem. I mean, you're just doing what you do. What business is it of me? If you want to sleep, how do I know that the greatest spiritual awakening won't happen in the sleep, in the space that's so sacred to us all at this moment? Maybe that's what you need, a sleep in a spiritual place. But, okay, how about the myth, be fruitful and multiply? Seems to have gotten us in a little difficulty, I'd say. I think that's open for revision by demand, popular demand. We have a wonderful one called Equal Opportunity for All. That's tasty, isn't it? Do you think that's coming into vogue or going out of vogue? See, that depends on whether you are hopeful or hopeless. Frank Rinpoche said a wise thing to me. He said, stand right in between them. Because if you cling to hope with fear, you won't get what you expect. If you cling to hopelessness, you kind of close down the whole possibility. It's the same thing in working with people that are dealing with cancer or with AIDS or with any illness that is potentially going to kill them. It's living with the presence of death.
All right. I think that's it for the moment.
It's always that balance.
Gets those scenes blocked in
Incredible balance.
adequately.
It's having people work to keep their temple healthy and alive without being attached to whether it stays that way.
So thanks for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting nurture. Have a good night, Earth.
Regenerating their bodies and having a healthy